hands where I can see them! Sir, I didn't do anything! That's not mine, please! Alex!
One lie can steal an entire life.
Imagine being just 17, full of dreams, playing basketball with friends, planning your future. Then one night, a corrupt detective decides you're the perfect scapegoat. He plants drugs in your backpack, frames you for a crime you didn't commit, and watches as your life gets destroyed. Years in prison. Family torn apart. But this teen refused to break. Today, he walks free, and the system that failed him just paid $1.20 million in settlement. This is the unbelievable true story of how one innocent kid fought back against the ultimate betrayal and won. Stick around, you won't believe how it ends. Before his name ever appeared in a police report, Alex was just a regular high school senior trying to do right by the world. He woke up early every morning to help his mom before school. A single mother who worked double shifts, she leaned on Alex more than she ever admitted. He made breakfast, checked the bills, and promised her again and again that one day things would be easier. He had good grades, clean records, big dreams. Alex wanted to go to college, but not for glory. He wanted to become a mechanic, to work with his hands, fix what was broken, and build a future piece by piece. Cars made sense to him. People were harder. Then came the night that erased everything. A drug-related robbery shook their neighborhood. Sirens screamed. Headlines demanded answers. And behind closed doors, pressure mounted. The city needed an arrest. The department needed results. Fast. That's when Detective Harris noticed Alex. A veteran officer. Decades on the force. A reputation starting to crack. Promotions slipping away. Harris wasn't hunting truth anymore. He was hunting closure. And Alex, standing on the corner that night, backpack over his shoulder, became the easiest solution. A routine stop. A calm voice. A search that took too long. Alex watched in disbelief as the detective pulled out items he had never seen before. Drugs, a gun from his bag. His heart dropped into his chest. "That's not mine," Alex said, his voice shaking. "I didn't do this. Please." The cuffs clicked anyway. Neighbors watched as he was pushed into the patrol car, tears streaming down his face, his future collapsing in real time. He wasn't a criminal. He was a kid who believed the police were there to protect him. Minutes later, the police raided his home. His mother's scream cut through the night when she saw her son in handcuffs. She collapsed to her knees, crying, begging, asking what her child had done wrong. No one answered her, because the truth didn't matter anymore. One lie had already been written. One report had already been filed. And in a single night, an innocent teen's entire life was rewritten. The trial didn't feel like justice. It felt like a race. The courtroom moved fast, too fast for truth to catch its breath. The evidence was laid out neatly on the table: the drugs, the gun, the report signed by a respected veteran detective. To the jury, it looked airtight, clean, official. What they didn't see were the fingerprints that didn't match. What they didn't hear was the silence where doubt should have lived. Then came the witness, a man from the neighborhood, nervous, eyes down. His voice shook as he testified that he had seen Alex near the crime scene, acting suspicious. What the jury never knew was the pressure behind that testimony, the late-night visit, the threats, the promise that things would get easier if he just said the right words. Alex stood when it was his turn to speak. "I didn't do this," he said, his voice breaking but steady. "I swear on my life. I'm innocent." But innocence doesn't carry weight when a badge speaks louder. The verdict came back quickly. Guilty. Alex's mother let out a sound that didn't sound human. She clutched her chest, shaking her head, whispering his name like it might wake her from a nightmare. Alex turned to look at her as the guards pulled him away. "I love you," he mouthed. Then the doors closed. Prison doesn't ease you in. It drops you. Alex's first night behind bars was a blur of metal sounds, gates slamming, keys clanking, voices shouting in the dark. The cell smelled like sweat and fear. He sat on the thin mattress, hugging his knees, trying not to cry. He was 17. That night he called home. "Mom, he whispered into the phone, his voice cracking, "I'm innocent. Please believe me." On the other end, his mother cried quietly so he wouldn't hear how broken she was. "I believe you," she said. "I always will." The line went dead. Days turned into months. Months into years. Alex wrote letters home until his hands cramped. He wrote about the food, the noise, the way time moved differently behind walls. His mom wrote back about work, double shifts, aching feet, overdue bills. She wrote about his younger siblings growing taller, learning to ride bikes, starting school. Life was moving on without him. Visits were both a gift and a wound. He smiled through the glass, pretending to be strong, while his mom memorized his face like she was afraid it might disappear. Every goodbye felt heavier than the last. At night, the depression crept in. There were moments Alex wondered if it would be easier to stop fighting, to accept the story everyone else believed. But then he'd reread his mom's letters. "I still believe in you. Don't give up. We're waiting for you." So he didn't. Instead, Alex did something unexpected. He started reading. In the prison library, buried between torn paperbacks and outdated encyclopedias, he found law books. At first, he didn't understand the words. Motions, appeals, procedural errors. But he kept going. Night after night. Sentence by sentence. He studied his own case like a stranger's tragedy. And slowly, cracks began to appear. Evidence that shouldn't have been admissible. A witness statement that contradicted itself. A detective whose reports never quite lined up. Alex began writing appeals by hand, pages filled with careful arguments and quiet hope. Most were denied. Some were never answered. But he kept filing them anyway. Because truth doesn't die just because it's ignored. Inside those walls, Alex grew older, but not harder. He lost birthdays, graduations, funerals. He lost years of youth he would never get back. But he gained something dangerous to corruption. Knowledge. Everyone believed the badge, the uniform, the official story. Everyone except the truth. And the truth was patient. It was waiting right there with him. Prison doesn't just take your freedom. It takes your calendar. Years slipped past Alex without permission. 17 turned into 20. 20 became 25. He watched the world change through letters and secondhand stories. Friends graduated. Cousins got married. Kids he used to babysit grew taller than him. He missed everything that marks a life. No prom night. No graduation cap. No first rail love. Just concrete walls and counted days. Birthdays came quietly, another number whispered to himself before lights out. Some nights, Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the sound of his own laughter. Other nights, he couldn't remember who he had been before prison taught him how to survive. The hope he once carried like armor began to thin. There was a moment, late one winter night, when it almost broke completely. Alex had just received another denial. Another appeal rejected with cold, legal language that felt heavier than chains. He sat on his bunk, letter trembling in his hands, and whispered the words he'd never allowed himself to say out loud. Maybe I'll never get out. The thought scared him more than prison ever had. What if this was it? What if the lie won? That night, he didn't write his mom. He didn't read law books. He just sat there, quiet, hollow, wondering how long a person could keep believing in tomorrow when today never changed. But truth has a strange way of resurfacing, especially when it's been buried too deep. It started with a crack. The witness, the same man whose shaky testimony had helped seal Alex's fate, walked into a legal aid office years later. His hair was grayer now. His hands still shook. Guilt had aged him faster than time. He told the truth. He admitted he'd lied. Admitted he'd been pressured. Admitted the detective had made it clear, testify, or suffer consequences. That confession landed like a quiet earthquake. Around the same time, something else was unfolding behind the scenes. An internal investigation, long overdue, had begun peeling back old cases tied to Detective Harris. Complaints that were once ignored now formed a pattern. Evidence mishandled. Confessions coerced. Suspects conveniently found when pressure was highest. Alex wasn't alone. Other convictions began to wobble. Files were reopened, reports questioned. A reputation once protected by a badge began to crumble. That's when the call came. A volunteer from the Innocence Project had reviewed Alex's handwritten appeals, pages written in careful ink, fueled by years of stubborn hope. She saw what others had dismissed. She heard the consistency in his voice. "We think you were framed," she said. Alex couldn't speak. For the first time in years, the word innocent didn't feel like a whisper. It felt official. Soon after, a pro bono attorney joined the case. Then another. They worked through the evidence with fresh eyes and no fear of the badge. Old storage boxes were opened, evidence bags re-examined, and then came the proof. DNA testing, never done during the Rush trial, showed the weapon didn't belong to Alex. Fingerprints told a different story. Records revealed discrepancies that pointed to one thing. The evidence had been planted. The same hands. The same detective. Again and again. Alex's case wasn't just reopening, it was unraveling. Hope returned slowly, like feeling in your legs after numbness. Alex started standing taller. He slept better. He allowed himself to imagine small things, sunlight without bars, food cooked at home, sitting next to his mom instead of speaking through glass. But outside those walls, the years had taken their toll. His mother's health was failing. Stress had carved deep lines into her face. Long hours, sleepless nights, doctor's visits she never mentioned unless pressed. When Alex finally saw her during a visit, she looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way she'd never been before. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, eyes full. "For everything." She smiled, reaching for the glass. "Don't you dare be sorry," she said. "You survived." Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "You hear me," she continued. "You keep fighting. You're coming home. I don't care how long it takes. I want to see you walk free." Alex swallowed hard. In that moment, the case wasn't about courts or settlements or justice systems. It was about a son who refused to let his mother's faith be wasted. About a woman who had aged under the weight of a lie, but never put down. When Alex returned to his cell that night, he didn't feel trapped. He felt ready. Because for the first time since that night on the street corner, the truth wasn't just surviving, it was speaking. And the walls that once swallowed his future, they were finally starting to crack. Justice didn't arrive quietly. It came with filings, motions, and a courtroom filled with tension, so thick it felt like history itself was holding its breath. After years of silence, a civil rights lawsuit was filed against the city and against Detective Harris personally. The words on the legal documents were sharp and unmistakable: fabrication of evidence, malicious prosecution, abuse of power. For the first time, the system that had crushed Alex was being forced to look at itself. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches. Advocates watched closely. Families, some hopeful, some haunted by similar stories, sat shoulder to shoulder. This wasn't just Alex's case anymore. It had become a mirror. From the very first day, the trial was explosive. Alex's attorneys moved carefully but relentlessly. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. They let the facts speak, and the facts were devastating. Evidence logs were projected on large screens, timelines dissected minute by minute. The planted drugs, the weapon that carried no trace of Alex, the routine stop that violated policy after policy. Then came the internal records, complaints filed against Detective Harris over the years, quietly dismissed or buried. One case looked like a mistake. 2 looked like coincidence. 7 looked like a pattern. Young suspects. Communities without power. Cases that closed quickly when numbers mattered most. The defense tried to argue error. Judgment calls. Stress. But every excuse cracked under the weight of consistency. Witnesses testified about pressure, about fear, about being told exactly what to say. When Detective Harris took the stand, the room went still. His voice was steady at first, confident, professional. But the questions kept coming, precise, unflinching. His reports were placed side by side, contradictions highlighted in red. Dates didn't line up. Statements changed. Then came the moment that shifted everything. "Detective," the attorney asked, How do you explain the presence of evidence that forensic testing proves never belonged to Alex? Harris hesitated. Just a second, but it was enough. The silence spoke louder than any confession. When it was Alex's turn to testify, he walked to the stand slowly. Not as a frightened teen, but as a man shaped by years of stolen time. He looked different now. Older, calmer, grounded. "I was just a kid," Alex said, his voice even, steady. "I believed if I told the truth, it would be enough." He described the night of the arrest. The shock, the confusion, the sound of the cuffs closing around his wrists. He talked about prison, not in anger, but in honesty. "I miss my life," he said simply. "Birthdays, graduations, my family growing up without me." The courtroom was silent. "But I never stopped believing justice would come," he continued. "Not because the system was perfect, but because truth doesn't disappear, just because you bury it." Jurors wiped their eyes. Then Alex's mother took the stand. She barely made it through her name before breaking down. Her hands shook as she described working double shifts, visiting her son behind glass, watching her health fade, while waiting for the world to listen. "They took my child," she sobbed, "and I couldn't do anything but believe." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Days later, the decision came. The conviction was overturned. Alex was officially exonerated. His name, once tied to a crime he never committed, was cleared in open court. Applause erupted before the judge could call for order. Alex closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face, as years of weight fell away in a single moment. But justice didn't stop there. The city, facing overwhelming evidence and public scrutiny, chose to settle the civil rights lawsuit. The number echoed across headlines: $1.2 million. Compensation for wrongful conviction. For emotional damage. For years that could never be returned. As the settlement was announced, Alex didn't smile. "This money isn't about revenge," he said later. "It's about rebuilding what was stolen." The gates opened. Slowly, deliberately. Alex stepped outside the prison for the first time as a free man. Sunlight hit his face differently, warmer, real. His mother ran to him, wrapping her arms around him as if letting go might make him disappear. They cried together, laughed together, breathed together. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. But Alex heard only one thing: the sound of freedom. He was home, not because the system was kind, but because truth refused to stay buried. And the fight that nearly destroyed him, it finally gave him his life back. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt gentle. In the weeks after his release, Alex learned how to live again. Slowly, intentionally, like someone touching fragile ground after a long fall. The world had moved fast without him, but he wasn't angry. He was focused. The first thing he did with the settlement wasn't for himself. He paid for his mother's medical bills, the appointments she had postponed, the treatments she had ignored while fighting for him. Sitting beside her in waiting rooms instead of speaking through prison glass felt like a miracle. "You don't have to be strong anymore," he told her. "I'm here." He helped his siblings too. College applications, tuition deposits, textbooks, things that once felt impossible were suddenly real. He didn't see the money as a reward. He saw it as repair. But Alex knew healing wasn't only personal, it was communal. He started a small mentoring program for at-risk teens in neighborhoods like his own. Kids who felt invisible. Kids who were one bad night away from becoming a statistic. He met them in community centers, gyms, classrooms, anywhere they'd listen. "I don't want any kid to go through what I did," he told them. "Your story isn't over just because someone labels you." Word spread. Soon, Alex was invited to speak at schools, churches, and legal forums. He talked about wrongful convictions, not with bitterness, but with clarity. He reminded people that justice only works when courage exists on both sides of the law. Students listened differently when he spoke. Because he wasn't theory. He was proof. At home, life softened. There were family picnics where laughter replaced fear. Photos taken without visiting room glass between them. Quiet moments where Alex just watched his family exist, something he once thought he'd never see again. One afternoon, sitting under open sky, his mother leaned against him and whispered, "We made it." And for the first time, Alex believed it completely. Then came the moment that closed the circle. Through his advocacy work, Alex met another young man, frightened, accused, unheard. The story felt familiar, too familiar. Alex connected him with lawyers, helped review documents, spoke to the family. This time, the truth didn't have to wait years. Watching that case move forward, Alex understood something deeply. His pain had become purpose. The cycle that once trapped him was breaking because he refused to walk away from it. Justice hadn't just freed him. It had transformed him. Alex lost years he can never get back. But he gained something corruption never expected, a voice powerful enough to expose it. This wasn't just a story about a settlement or a courtroom win. It was proof that one person's courage can uncover lies, challenge power, and change lives forever. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that truth still matters, like, share, and subscribe for more real stories where justice fights back. Because sometimes the system doesn't save the innocent. People do.